Hello, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome back to the Absolutely Studying Podcast, your favorite hub for cracking the code on academic success. I'm Terrell, and I am super excited to have you here back with me for another episode that's bound to sprinkle some learning magic into your study session. Today, I want to talk about smart study habits and techniques that will help you to maximize your learning in minimal time. But before we dive headfirst into today's topic, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like a super smart study whiz who could conquer mountains and mountains of knowledge in a single bound? Well, if not, you are in for a treat because that is exactly what we're unlocking today. So hold on to your highlighters because this episode, we are talking about some really smart study habits that are going to tweak and improve your overall progress and efficiency at studying. These are techniques that are going to maximize your learning in minimal amounts of time because the whole theme for this month is, in fact, time management. Right now, we are right in the middle of the back-to-school frenzy, so let's face it, there is no time. But don't worry because I'm here to ensure that your study sessions are not just effective, but also efficient. I know that you might have a pen and a notebook ready to jot down every golden nugget of wisdom that I'm about to share. And believe me, you are going to want to. So if you don't have one already, hit pause and grab one because these techniques are about to become your secret study weapons to get you ahead, to avoid all of that stress and overwhelm, and to help you really make some efficient study choices. At the end of the day, what I want you to understand, what I want you to realize, the epiphany, the lesson that I want you to walk away from today's episode with is that studying smart is not hard. You don't have to break a sweat. You don't have to end each study session frustrated and flustered and in tears. Instead, I'm going to help you to cover these practical tips that are going to help you make these incremental improvements over time until you have a study plan that is designed specifically for you and your learning style. And remember, if you do find these tips useful, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and join us for the rest of the time management and productivity series running throughout the rest of this month. Okay, let's move on from the intro and just get started. Depending on how long you have been following, you may or may not know a little bit about my story. I decided to go back to university as a mature student. I knew that I wanted more. I knew that I was smart enough to do so many amazing things, but I needed to prove it to myself first. So I enrolled in university as a working full-time single mom and just bootstrap my way through because I didn't want to take on a whole bunch of debt. When I say that learning how to study smart and efficiently was like prime priority for me, that is an understatement because I had no time. I was working 40 hours a week at minimum. I had my son. I really wanted to get good marks because I knew I wanted to do a lot with my degree. I wanted to be able to apply to different programs and I was going for a Bachelor of Science and they are just so competitive for a lot of their programs. So getting the best marks was really important to me because again, I had so much to prove to myself. So learning a lot of these tweaks to really study smart, to really figure out where your learning style is and exactly what works for you was top priority for my first couple of years in university. So I really dedicated myself to learning how to study. And that's one of the big motivators for me to help you guys. I was one of those struggling students on some of those days. I was one of those students that was crying in the bathroom because I was so stressed out about finals. And looking back, I just wish I had somebody to kind of guide me through all of this overwhelming information and just help me to pick out and help me to identify what my strengths were, what my weaknesses were, tell me where to look. And that's what I hope to be able to help you guys out with. One of the things that I really want to discuss over the course of this episode is to create a study routine that works for you, that you feel comfortable with, active learning techniques that will save you time because of how effective they are. And then, of course, spaced repetition and the importance of going back and not only revisiting the topics that you studied at the beginning of the year or at the beginning of the class, the beginning of the semester, but also being able to incorporate those and look back on those concepts and how they have grown or expanded or how they relate to what you are studying now. So those are 3 big points that we're going to go through in this episode and really make sure that we understand and that we can incorporate the simple 3-step routine to really increase the efficiency of your study sessions. So let's start with active learning because that is really one of the most potent study techniques. And we'll incorporate the others from there. Active learning is a way to actually actively engage in the information under study. So as you are learning, as you are being instructed on the information, to find ways to actively involve yourself or actively take action on the information. This can be things like during a lecture, you are note-taking and summarizing and writing little questions that pop into your head. This could be something like discussing and dissecting and talking about all sides of a concept. This could be something like problem solving, trying to imagine different situations that this concept would be in and the solutions to it. This could be case studies. It could be actually going through and either resolving or researching case studies, which are real life examples of when this concept came into play and how it was resolved. And maybe even taking that step a step further and explaining either in writing or talking out loud to yourself why those actions were taken and what your opinions on the either action or result were. Why do you think that that action had that result, considering what you are learning in that process? It can also involve role playing with other people where you are discussing different potential or theoretical case studies or circumstances where that would come into play and going through the actions you would use to solve this conflict or solve this problem given this particular concept. So as you can see, all of these methods involve action given the active learning. So that is basically active learning in a nutshell. There are a ton of different ways that you can apply it to pretty much any type of learning, any type of concept. So why is active learning so important? Why are these activities where you take action on the information? Why is it that they save you time as opposed to just reading your notes or going over your notes? Why is it that taking action on the information is so much more effective than more passive learning? And that is basically because you are working with the material. You are making links between that material, that concept under study, and other materials. When you are doing problem solving, you have to go through and you have to use a breadth of knowledge and personal experience in order to judge how you would solve a problem. In order to summarize a concept or a piece of text, you have to try and think of it in a different light. It's not as simple as just putting it in different words. It's going to take a lot of mental processes to do that. When you are quizzing yourself with flashcards, which is another great active learning technique, you are making yourself come up with the answer. You are exercising those pathways, those mental associations to the information with very little prompt. Same with writing practice quizzes. Same with teaching others. You have to put yourself in the position of the other person and consider their background knowledge of the situation. And then you have to tone your vocabulary, the way you explain it to this other person, which is not going to be necessarily the way you receive the information in the lecture. So all of these things are actually using multiple areas of your brain, of your memory, of your internal mental processing to be able to come out with these answers, to actually take part intelligently in these activities and being able to link the piece of knowledge that you need to remember with all of these other areas of your brain, your critical thinking, your problem solving, your communication sectors. By being able to exercise that piece of knowledge in conjunction with all of these other areas of your brain is going to be able to really solidify those mental associations and really help you to build on that piece of knowledge and help you to remember it and continue to build upon it going forward. Spaced repetition is another technique that I had mentioned a little bit in the beginning. Now that we have a foundation of how to study using these active learning techniques, we can actually talk about when or how often to study. Spaced repetition is very much remembering the forgetting curve. The forgetting curve essentially means that you're going to learn something the first time, but within 24 hours of learning it, you're going to forget about 60% of it. This is especially true with things like lectures or reading. Your brain will just naturally decay or erode away some of the information, especially the fine details, as time progresses away from learning that. So you want to regularly revisit information just to be able to keep that foundation, to be able to hold on to it and remember it better for longer. One of the big things is that you want to, within 24 hours, review what it was in the lecture. That can be done a couple of ways. If you do a chapter reading before you go to lecture, then the lecture itself will be that refresher. And then within another 24 hours, maybe going over the notes or rewriting the notes or going through and doing another activity where you put together your textbook notes with your lecture notes, doing another activity with that information within that 24 hours is going to help you to relearn a lot of those details and hold on to them for long. So then maybe 72 hours, you'll visit it again. Maybe another week after that, you'll revisit this concept again. So it's really making sure that you're revisiting a concept at regular intervals to remind yourself and retain more of that initial information. So if you ever want to get to 100% of that information, you've got to keep revisiting it over the days, the weeks, the months, and even eventually the years in order to be able to retain more and more and hold on to it. So the stuff you remember and you learn about in September, by November, if you have not revisited it at all, you're only going to remember just little drops and bits and pieces, and it might be something that's kind of familiar. For example, in the first couple of weeks of Bio and Chemistry 101, you are going to learn the scientific method. Now, the scientific method is a procedure that is crucial to science and the proving of any kind of lab experiments, any kind of theories, hypotheses, anything like that. But you're not necessarily going to work through every single step of the scientific method continuously over the course of the semester. You're going to move on and you're going to talk about new things. In biology, you're going to move on and you're going to talk about cells and life and plants and animals. In chemistry, you're going to start talking about atoms and chemical reactions and so on. In chemistry, you might visit it a little bit more when you do a lab, but not necessarily, not the nitty-gritty. So on your final exam, you can pretty much bet, because this is such a foundational topic, that they're going to ask you questions about the details of the scientific method. Now, if you just read it in your textbook once or twice in September and you never studied the steps, you never studied the reasons since then, and you've now gone through the whole semester and you've built all of this rich information about life or about chemicals or about, stoichiometry, you might have some vague memories about the details of the scientific method. But could you answer questions really in depth to get the grade you want? Possibly, possibly not. But if you were to revisit it, maybe once the following week, a couple times in September, once or twice in October, once or twice in November, and then again when you're studying for your finals in December, you're going to have a much higher chance of being able to actually explain and reiterate each of the steps of the scientific method and the reasoning behind it and all of that because you did study it. And that doesn't take a lot of commitment to touch on it a few times over the year. I'm not saying you have to study your entire textbook every day. What I am saying is that you have to go back and just touch on and cover and remind yourself of the earlier concepts throughout the course of the semester. One tool that I do have for you, you can actually find it in the description, is a study guide template and activity tracker. And it has a template on there that allows you to track all of the different concepts throughout the semester and then track how you are studying and if you are studying them. And I think there's like 20 some odd different activities that you can do to review these concepts. And so one of the real misconceptions I do get from some new students is that they think that the whole week of the activity tracker, they think that this whole activity tracker is meant to be done all at once. And that's not true. These are meant to be split up over the course of the semester. And as you review and study this, maybe once or twice in September, maybe 2 times in October, maybe 2 or 3 times in November, and then again in December, you can go through and you can do one of these activities, whichever one organically feels right or whichever one fits into your study block. You can do these active learning techniques in order to review and revisit these subjects. And this is to make sure that you are adequately studying each and every topic over the course of the semester and nothing gets forgotten. So when you are going through and filling out all of the concepts on the side here, and you are going through and tracking how you are studying over there, you don't have to rush all of this into week 1 or into the week that you are studying that topic. Take time and space some of these out so that you are coming back in October, November, March, or whenever you are taking the class and reviewing it so that you can see that you are going back to the beginning, to the middle, and covering the end, and really being able to revisit all of these topics to have the best and strongest understanding so that you are the most prepared for finals. Now that we have studied active learning and we have studied why it is so important to incorporate spaced repetition over the course of the semester, I want to talk about a couple of creative elements that a lot of people overlook. I did get the pleasure of being able to incorporate them quite a bit, being a science major, but they are often overlooked by a lot of other majors, and that is mnemonics. Mnemonics are little memory tricks to help you to obviously remember things better. So that can be something like acronyms. That can be something like using mental associations. It can be the chunking method, the method of loci, and it can also be things like songs or rhymes or rhythms. And using these different memory tricks for things that you do have to rote memorize is super helpful. So acronyms is a very easy one. An acronym that most people in North America would be really familiar with is HOMES. HOMES are the name of the Great Lakes. So that is Huron, Ontario, Michigan, eerie, and superior. HOMES. The great thing about that is that you can put it into a word and you can use that to remember. If you asked me what the Great Lakes were without using the acronym, I would probably not be clear on it. But because I remember the acronym, I will always remember what lakes are the great ones in North America. Things like that will help you to remember things. And while Holmes was from elementary school, when you are trying to group memorize things like muscle groups or bones and skeletal structures, using something like acronyms, associations, chunking, that's going to be really, really helpful because that's so much brute memorization that you could probably, with enough time and repetition, remember organically. But when you are blasting through chapters per week, it's going to be hard to keep up with in actual university. So, for example, the bones in the arm, ultra red hair. Ulna for ultra, radius, humerus, ultra red hair. That's how you remember the bones in the arm. And having these little memory techniques are going to help you to remember those brute memorizations. Now, I am a very visual person. So when you start layering other techniques on top of that one, it's going to help you remember even better. So taking those same examples that I used, Holmes doesn't just remind me of the lakes. In my brain, I also picture a cabin on a lake, and that helps me to remember that it's Holmes. That helps me to remember Great Lakes. When I remember ultra red hair, I actually picture somebody with a super red hairy arm, and that's how I remember ultra red hair. So being able to layer it, have that extra association where you are linking a visual image to an acronym is also going to help and is also part of mnemonics. As far as something like songs and rhymes, you can think of when you were growing up and you were singing the ABCs. There's a very, very deliberate rhythm to singing the ABCs. And that's how you remember it. So that's why often if you are going and filing or putting things in alphabetical order, you'll have to stop and sing yourself the alphabet. Because a lot of us don't just brute memorize the alphabet. We memorize the song, the rhythm, the rhyme, and that's how we memorize the alphabet. And so as you can see, when you look at some of the most basic memorization that we do as children, there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with relying on some of these methods as long as you can really incorporate them and ingrain them into how you are studying, how you are remembering, and that you are able to have that foundation and rely on that foundation. So mnemonics are amazing. They really allow you to expand your creativity and rely on your creativity to be able to incorporate so many memories. And I could probably go on for an hour just on mnemonics alone. Maybe we will. Maybe I will put that up as a question. Let me know if we should go on a deep dive of all of the different types of mnemonics down in the comments. And we will see if we will do one of those, if it's popular, if you guys actually are interested in learning more about mnemonic devices. Now that we have talked a little bit about adding creativity, we have talked a little bit about active learning, spaced repetition, all of these things, we need to talk about combining them into that study plan that works for you. Each one of you are going to be different. You're going to be unique. You have different learning styles. You have different sub-learning styles. And that's going to change how you optimally study. And so a lot of the time, the best thing to do is really to figure out what study activities you enjoy. What do you enjoy? What do you not dread when you have to sit down and study? I'm telling you right now, I need you to sit down and study the skeletal structure of a fish for the next 25 minutes. What activities are you going to dread? And what activities would you be able to tolerate? So if I gave you a textbook and I told you to read this textbook for the next 25 minutes, is that something that makes your heart sink? Or are you looking at all of the different things that you can do while reading your textbook and you're excited? I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to make flashcards. I'm going to write notes. Or are you the type of person who wants to look at an image and redraw that image? And then start labeling it? Are you the type of person who wants to make flashcards or skip making the flashcards altogether and just quiz yourself over and over and over again? So this auditing of techniques is going to really help you to create a study plan, create a study routine that really, really, really works to your learning style. Because they're going to be activities that you will not dread. Now, there's probably going to be one or two activities that you always have to engage in that you're not going to be quite crazy about. But at least if you rely more heavily on the ones that you do walk away from feeling great, feeling inspired, feeling like you actually got things done, then that's really going to limit the discomfort and the boredom of the ones that you have to muscle through. As you are going through, as you are learning and experimenting with new techniques, try and figure out how to mix and match them to suit your learning style, to suit your interest, your hobbies, what you enjoy. And that the ability to increase your focus, the ability to enjoy your study time is really going to maximize the efficiency of your learning, of taking in the information, and of how you are spending your time. Because if you are more actively engaged, you are enjoying your study session, you're going to walk away from those sittings with so much more than when you are forcing yourself to focus, when you are forcing yourself to do these activities that you are not necessarily enjoying, that you are not necessarily inclined to do. And that is going to make a huge difference in the results that you get from studying. Now, as you are going through and you are trying out these different study strategies and trying to figure out what you like and building your study plan, I want you to realize that this is not going to be the end all, be all the first time you design it. Your study plan is going to grow and evolve over the course of your university career, over the course of your academic journey. It's always important to switch it up when it no longer suits you. So as you become more comfortable in studying, as you become more comfortable with the course material, as you progress through the different years and classes, things are going to change. You're going to change. Your academic literacy is going to change, and so will your study plan. So it is important to always keep testing, keep auditing your study plan. Make sure that you are allowing it to grow as you do. Make sure that you are swapping out study strategies or activities that don't fit for that class or no longer suit your learning style, and that you are swapping them in for techniques that work better, or new techniques that you've learned, or techniques that fit the class a little bit better. You don't have to stay rigid in something. Just because you got an A on one particular test does not mean that that is the end all be all of your study strategy. You can keep evolving. You can keep incorporating things. You don't have to sit down for the exact same cookie cutter model of a study plan every single sit down, every single semester. You can switch it up. Looking at the activity tracker, you can go through and you can do different things at different points in time for different concepts. You don't have to sit down for 2 straight hours and just do notes or just do reading. You don't have to sit down for an hour and a half and just draw diagrams or try and think up mnemonics if that's not working for you anymore, or if that is not going to be helpful for the particular class you're using it in. Success is all about finding what works best for you and your unique brain, and how you think and how you process information. and you are on this amazing journey of learning and self-discovery. And as you learn more about yourself and your brain and your learning style, you are going to be able to constantly tweak your study plan and boost that performance and find things that work so much better for you. So I really hope this episode was helpful. We went over spaced repetition. We went over having that effective, cohesive study plan and auditing it and going over it over and over and over again. We went over some mnemonics and some creative ways to brute memorize some of the information that you're not going to be able to just organically learn and take in some of the more active learning situations. And so I hope that that was a well-rounded thing. Again, if you do want to learn more about mnemonics or about creative learning styles, make sure to let me know in the comments, or all of my contact information is available in the description. So I would love to hear from you. I do really want you to embrace the hopefully inspiration that you feel after this discussion we had today, and go out and try some new techniques and try and share some of your experiences with trying new techniques and how they worked, or even the horror stories if it was just overwhelming and did not work with your brain. Next week, we are going to be talking about time management and how it can be really helpful for overwhelmed students and just being able to figure out how to prioritize your tasks and your goals. So make sure to set your alarm and come back here next week so that so we can have a chitty chat about that. Thank you for allowing me to join you on your adventure through university and post-secondary learning. And if you do have a friend that you know is struggling or on this academic journey with you, share the link to this episode, and hopefully you can together lean on each other and set up a little accountability partnership to create the best study plan ever. I will see you next week when we talk about being overwhelmed and prioritizing those tasks. But until then, I hope you have an amazing adventure.